Everyone. Today is the March 25th meeting of the Finance Committee, and I thank everyone who was flexible enough to add this extra meeting to our schedule. My first order after calling us to order, as I see we have a quorum of members, is to make sure that members can hear and be heard because we're conducting this virtually. So I'll just call out names as I see them on the screen. Bob?
Present.
Mandy?
Present.
Bernie?
Present.
And Andy.
Present.
And the other council member, Alicia Walker, has said she will be coming late, and I haven't heard from Tom Porter. So the agenda for the day that was posted needs to be amended because some of the items on it were already taken care of at the council last night. We didn't get a few referrals. They were made a decision. So the first item today is to review and discuss the potential veterans options for exemptions. And Kim Mew has joined us, our assessor. So both to talk about it, to answer questions. The other item that it actually, as I found out, it never made the referral, is there was an expenditure that would be a consultant in support of the Charter Commission review, and it wasn't officially referred to us, but I think we can discuss it, not take any vote, and it will be taken up at the council meeting on the 7th, where there'll be a public hearing, and then the Finance Committee would take a vote at that point because we didn't have that referred to us yet. Melissa, I see your hand is up. Is that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was referred. We just didn't post it on the agenda. So that's
Right.
So same scenario, but
Yeah, so it was referred, but as of when we posted the agenda, we had omitted it. Mandy?
I was going to say the same thing. It's referred to the council, to the committee. The question is, because it was referred last night, can it fit under 48-hour rule?
That's what I was hoping. And so, it's a fairly small amount. And so having a discussion and getting to this, I'm not enough of the rules person, Mandy, to know whether having not posted it, but only had it referred last night, can we get further than just discussing it? Paul?
I would, if there's some way to move that along, I would, as a member of the Charter Commission review, I would really appreciate having that move forward as rapidly as possible.
I think the best course of action is you can discuss it today, and then when you do the public forum, have a finance committee meeting scheduled for that night that you can physically vote, actually not vote on it today, just an abundance of caution in terms of action, so that you have the conversation. I think it's pretty straightforward request. And then you do the public forum and you just make a recommendation that night.
Okay, so if that's okay with everyone, that's the way we'll handle it, that we'll get to the point where I guess we get to the point where we know what we think or what questions we have, and then we hear from the public. And Bernie, last night, the link to how this would work was approved in terms of contracting. It just, this piece of it was referred to us, so action on the 7th would have always been required because we have to do a hearing on it. So that shouldn't delay it at all in terms of a decision. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to public comments. It's not the only other, I'd like to report to, after we hear from Kim and we talk about this, I'd like to report on some discussions I had just on budget issues facing the town and just do a report of the chair as an additional just FYI. So I'm looking at, for public, we have I'm looking for any hands from the public that would like to make a comment. And I'm not seeing any right now. We have one member of the public, a counselor. Okay, so then we are on to veterans.
do you want me to share the memo?
I think so, and then I'm hoping everyone will be prepared with any questions they might have had about it, and I sent a few in right after this was referred to us, that I thought the assessor might be able to talk about it. And according, Paul, you said there's been some discussion. Kim is prepared to tell us a little bit about the complexities of this. So they're basically, Mandy can summarize this too, but they're basically two parts to this. One is uh, an exemption on taxes that would extend the exemption we already do and include a COLA to it. And the second has to do with vehicles. And there's an option that's been allowed on vehicles. And that is my shortest summary of it. Mandy, would you like to add anything to it? So those are the two pieces of something we're not already doing.
Yeah, I think you summarized it as best and quickly as it could be. It's a complicated in the weeds thing, which is why all I did to my memo was attach the DOR's Division of Local Services explanation.
And so, my veterans we already go to the max on both for seniors and veterans that we can until we got these other options. So the questions I had that I sent in, and then I'm turning it over to you, Kim, because how easy or hard would it to be to do this in terms of what information we would need to have that we might not otherwise have? And then how hard would it be to implement it, in terms of, and I was doing hard by staff hours, computer systems, anything else we use to, in the assessor's office when these exemptions, and I have no idea about how we do it now. So my questions is, how complicated is this? And I think we can take it down and then just give, unless anybody has other questions to ask at the outset, and then we can turn it over to Kim. And Mandy.
Yeah, the only one it's more for information purposes, which is there an estimated sort of amount that these exemptions would be used at? And I guess as it relates to the coming budget and the projections we've seen, is that currently within the projections or absorbable within that abatements and exemptions line in the projections?
And I forgot, that is one of the questions I sent in. I forgot, what will this cost us if we did it, a best guess. So those are whichever order or whatever makes sense to you, Kim, to talk about from your perspective.
Okay.
Kim, I would go ahead and lead with your recommendation.
Okay. So my recommendation is to not adopt either one of these, and I will get into why. First, I just want to touch on the excise tax because it's the most simple. So the new section for the excise tax changes the eligibility for the excise for a veteran who has a service-connected disability. And basically what that means is if you are 100% disabled veteran due to a service-connected disability, you are now eligible for a full excise abatement, regardless of what your disability is for. So before it had to be loss of limbs, eyes, an eye and a limb, something to that nature, more along lines with the handicap exemption. Whereas now you could have severe PTSD and be 100% disabled because of it, and you can now get that full exemption on your excise tax. So to touch on that, we don't actually have to vote. It just automatically goes into place. That's something that the state has changed, and the rating of the disability actually goes right through the veterans office, so we don't have to do any of that. It goes through the doctors basically at the VA. So the only thing we have to do is just ask for that letter from those veterans that are 100% disabled, and then those that we already have getting real estate exemptions, we can just now go forward with giving them the excise abatements. Many of the veterans that we already have getting real estate abatements already also get the excise abatements. So fairly minuscule difference in regards to the budget on that. And we also get the reimbursement from the state. So even if we had 100 more veterans come forward with that, it really wouldn't cost us more than a few minutes to process each abatement. So timing on that for our office would be very minuscule and very doable, especially now that we're finally fully staffed in the assessor's office. So that's no worries on that, and we don't need to act on that. In regards to the two clauses, so the clause 22I and the clause 22J, the clause 22I basically would change the amount that we give to all the veterans by a COLA, which is determined by the Department of Revenue. And then, so one of the examples that they gave is if a recipient of this exemption was getting a $400 exemption to start, and the Department of Revenue said we're going to go up by 5%, they would get a $420 exemption instead of 400. Before I get into what we do now, the clause 22J will basically allow us to double the exemption. So if someone gets a $400 exemption, we can now give them 800. And then the increase in the meantime would follow along with the COLA as well. So what we already do is that exactly. So we have adopted Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5C and a half, which allows us to do this already. And I did touch base with David Burgess, the previous assessor, just to double check that everything was exactly the same as I thought. And that's the case. So basically, both of these cover all personal exemptions. So that's veterans, seniors, blind, anyone who applies for a personal exemption under those clauses are able to be covered by this. If we are to adopt the clause 22J, it's specific to only veterans. And the clause actually states that it will not apply in the fiscal year that we already use Chapter 59, Section 5C and a half, which means that if we are to adopt 22J, we cannot use the other clause, which then hurts our blind and our seniors. And we certainly don't want to do that. So basically what it would do is allow us to continue the way we're processing the abatements for the veterans, but have to revert back to another method for the seniors and blind, which would mean a senior who's been applying for an exemption for 5 or 10 years, who now gets $2,000 off of their tax bill, they're going to revert to the original amount, which is $1,000. So that's going to affect each of them by $1,000 potentially. And then with the blind, it starts out at a $500 exemption amount. And again, if they've been applying year after year and it's gotten to the point of being able to double, that's going to affect them by $500. But it won't affect the veterans at all. So my recommendation is to continue doing what we're doing. We already don't get a reimbursement for this extra amount of exemptions that we give. So it's not going to cost us anymore to just keep doing what we're doing. It would cost us in the sense of heartache for those seniors and blind who no longer get the exemption if we do move forward with the clause 22J. So my recommendation would be to not adopt either of these because basically we're already doing it. And I hope that makes sense. And if not, please feel free to ask me any questions.
Mandy.
No, I appreciate it, and that explanation made complete sense, and changed my understanding of what this was. So, as the sponsor, I knew we were already doing much of it for the veterans. I wasn't sure the COLA was in there for the veterans, so it's good to hear that it is. And it was my understanding that this was one that we could just do once, and then if we forgot for 1 year, it wouldn't affect the veterans and it wouldn't affect everything else. So hearing that if we do this, it affects the others, I completely understand why you're saying don't do it, because
Yes.
I was looking at it more as, oh, maybe we don't have to vote that one every year and we don't have to worry about missing them 1 year, because it's not an every year thing, was my understanding. So I appreciate the explanation and completely understand why you would recommend it this way than that way.
No problem. And I like you guys, I will do whatever I can for our veterans. I believe they, deserve that. So I did a lot of research when I first found out about this because I was kind of thinking it was an extra exemption to give them more than we already give them, but it does turn out that we are actually giving them as much as we possibly can right now. So I'm glad to hear that as well.
Bernie,
Yeah, on a personal note, my father was 100% disabled veteran. Sort of got blown up on tin end. So I want to thank you, Kim, for your research on this and your carefulness, and for being showing that extra concern towards vets, and particularly the disabled vets. I know that for somebody who's 100% disabled, my father's car meant all the world. So thank you.
You're welcome. And something I can mention too, specifically with the motor vehicles, each veteran is allowed only one exemption per year. So what assessors generally do is if the person doesn't specify which vehicle they would like it to be on, we generally go into the system and look to see if they have multiples, which one is the most expensive, and we choose that one. The only hang up is if they are to get a new car, they do have to pay that excise if they've already gotten the exemption this year. And then if it's a brand new car and it's more expensive, we can switch it next year. But just a little note on how we do that. So
I'm taking notes, and we'll also have the Zoom meeting. But what I might want to do, Kim, is just give you a paragraph that I write up so that we can explain that we're already doing it. In fact, you're going over and above, it sounds like, in terms of selecting, with the vehicles, if there's more than one. That was very useful information to have. So it doesn't seem like we're not doing what we can be doing.
right.
And
Yeah, I'd be happy to look at that if you'd like.
I did understand the explanation, but I'm not sure I will write it clearly.
No problem. I'm happy to look at that.
And I'm just saying this because are there any other questions? Then Mandy.
Yeah, I guess, is the motion then a recommendation on, I'm trying to figure out, I'm the sponsor here too. So what's easiest for the council and all? Is it a motion from the finance committee that is a recommendation of no action that the sponsor concurs with, and then we put that report out to the council and then nothing ever happens? Or would it be preferred if it gets withdrawn? Like I almost feel like writing that report, Kathy, would be helpful to the council, and then maybe a motion that says the finance committee recommends no action and the sponsor concurs.
That's what I
that.
think, Mandy. I think it would be good, a motion to take no action. And then the report says the reasons we went that way is because we learned during the meeting that veterans are always already getting this. And in fact, one of the clauses would interact in a way that would not work well for seniors and the blind. And then I was going to do the one other sentence. I love the example that if you've got two vehicles, that the assessor goes out of their way to pick the more expensive, to give you the maximum you can get, since you can only get one vehicle. So I think that would be good. So it didn't seem like that we just didn't want to do it, that we actually found that we were doing it already. So it will be, that's a half a page to say that, not longer. So
Kathy, I also have a printout of the bulletin that actually explains everything, as well as some questions and answers from DLS, and then just my own little notes. I'd be happy to give those to you if you'd like them.
Okay, that'd be great. So Mandy, I think that would be the motion then, so that it's not just that you withdrew it, that it can be that the sponsor concurred with the recommendation.
So, I won't make a motion since Andy's got a hand up.
So Mandy?
Yeah, I was just curious whether your research indicated any reason that the legislature did this. Was there any legislative history behind it?
I think there's always been the look to help veterans as much as possible. I think many towns were not doing this, so this was just another way to look at it, where they're not necessarily putting a lot of money into this resource because it's just veterans, whereas the Chapter 59, Section 5C.5 is for all clauses. So if they didn't, if it was a smaller town and they couldn't afford to do it for everyone, this at least gives them the option to do it for the veterans. But I didn't do too much research on exactly why, so that's only my guess.
If I may,
Yep.
that concurs with what I found was there was an attempt to say to allow towns to choose this solely for veterans. And I had understand it as you could do it for veterans and only do one vote. We vote these clauses every year, right? And I thought it was we vote this one once and we don't have to vote the veteran one ever again. That it was also not just a every year vote, it was do it for veterans. You could carve out the veterans and you only had to adopt it once, not yearly. So, yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready for your motion.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Kathy, would you like me to see if I can find the date that we had originally adopted the Chapter 59, Section 5C.5? Would that help in your report? Just so we can say how long we've been doing that for.
That would be great. And then the other thing that would be great is I'm not quite sure how you write 5C.5, whether it's, it's like a 1/2 or a 0.5, in terms of
They on the
what does
on-
that mean in
I
terms
think it's a
of,
half.
so I won't write it wrong if you tell me how.
on the DLS bulletin, it's actually written with the like 1/2
that's
or 1/2, I should say.
And I have seen the statutes that have 3/4 too.
Yes. Yes, there's actually a
Squeeze it in
5C and
somewhere.
3/4.
It's just for those that wonder how you squeeze one more thing in without changing the renumbering of everything else.
Well, you could go to 9/10.
So we're ready for the motion, Mandy.
So I guess it's move to recommend the council take no action on the local option changes for veteran tax exemptions pursuant to the HERO Act.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm writing that down. I'll just re-listen to the tape to get the wording accurately. And I'm seeing no further hands for discussion. Put it to a vote. Kathy is a yes. Bob?
Yes.
Mandy?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
And Bernie?
Concur.
And Alicia has not yet joined us. So it is unanimous with one resident absent and one counselor absent at the time we voted.
And Kathy, just obviously your memo can indicate that, I mean, I voted for it, right? But you can also say as sponsor, I'm in concurrence with this, not just as a finance committee member.
Yeah, no, I will do. Sponsor concurred. Yes, I will. I owe people a draft of the last meeting when we unanimously approved the CPAC proposed, and that's because I found out it wasn't going to be discussed at the council till April 7th. So I will probably combine these two into one report of two recommendations. One is recommend on the CPAC proposal. So I will get them done before I leave on Sunday. But, just a draft, and then turn it over to Bob to the extent there are any changes in it. You can just take the changes. So thank you. And Kim, thank you very much. That was incredibly clear.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And also thank you for the news on the extra effort that you do at the assessor. I think assessors are often unsung heroes for the town. They're not just the people who present us with the tax bill every year.
Well, thank you.
And so the next item is the item we're discussing but not voting on. As there was referred to the council, it's taking out of free cash, and maybe you can put it up on the if you can find it, Melissa, but Bernie will know it and the others will know it. It's basically allowing for a consultant fee to work with the Charter Review Commission and the person that is named is an expert on this to help guide some of the decisions and informed some of the decisions. And the money for this, as my recollection when I read it quickly, is coming out of free cash. So it will have to have a hearing at the council level. So if that summary was enough, the main thing I didn't say is the amount of money, because I don't have it right in front of me this second.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I grabbed the wrong memo.
$15,000.
I think it was 15,000, yeah.
Yeah, $15,000.
Okay,
We had estimated it would be 20. They came back with 15, and we said, oh, getting it below wholesale.
so I see Holly's hand is up. Holly?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if the cost of a consultant is over $10,000, it is going to have to go out for quotes and for procurement. You will not be able to pick a consultant at that price range.
It's
Well, it's the Collins Center, it's a
intergovernmental.
public, is a government agency.
Oh, it's a governmental agreement?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah,
different.
right.
That's completely
Yeah,
different then. Okay. I just didn't want y'all to get your heart set on somebody
No,
that we
we-
couldn't follow
No,
procurement
no.
wise. Okay.
One of the attractions of, besides the experience that the Collins Center has had, worked with majority of the towns and cities and towns in the state, helped write the charter to begin with. All that is great, and they've got real experts on the staff. All that's the cherry on top of it all is it's a public agency, so we can shake hands.
And
Okay.
Holly, last night the council voted on the intergovernmental agency piece of it. We said that's fine, so, but it was very helpful for me to understand from what you just said of why that was important. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see Mandy's hand is up.
Yeah, I just want us not to lose sort of track of that our budget guidelines for FY 25, the year we're in, had actually asked that money for a consultant be included in the budget. And then when we reviewed the budget last spring, we all missed it. So I think that's an important thing to note, given where this request is coming from and when it's coming, that in theory, if we had not missed it at that point, it might have already, this issue might have been corrected months ago. But the guidelines last year had foreseen this circumstance and requested Paul to ensure that the Charter Review Committee had funds for the hiring of a consultant if they had needed and wanted one.
Okay, and so since we're not doing a report on this.
Here we go. Finally, sorry.
So since we're not doing a report on this one, since we're not taking a vote on this, it will be important, Mandy, that you make that point on April 7th, whenever there are comments on it. So it's a fairly simple referral.
You can make a report of what we talked about, can't you?
Sure, I'll just say, okay, Andy, good. I'll figure out how to word that. We had a discussion and I got Mandy's piece, and that this will be a hearing on April 7th, and the Finance Committee after that will make a recommendation. Okay. That saves us from having to write anything later. Anything else on this?
Do you want me to, oh, you're right. You're not going to do the vote anyway, so.
Yeah. So the only, it's not a question about doing this, but does the way this works when we pay for someone, they work whatever number of hours they think they've contracted for whatever duration of time. So Bernie, over in the Charter Review Group, you're careful on how you use their hours, or you spread them out or you focus them. Yeah. So I assume that there's sort of a list of things that you didn't have an easy way of getting answers, and this
we'll put in place a process for contact who gets to work with the Collins Center and under what conditions, and who contacts who, because we all know that once you dial the number, the clock starts. That's one thing. The other thing is that frankly, the Collins Center has indicated that they can be generous in terms of saving us time and money by giving us all their work as public documents, all their works, and they can pretty easily and very inexpensively generate copies of what they've done for others. So we have samples and examples, and can do some of this. We'll be able to do much of this on our own.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, so the scope of services is included with the memo. And so it does say this is an all-in $15,000 fee. And if there are additional fees, they have hourly rates that would apply. So their mission is to meet the needs of the committee.
Right, and it just, just from my only other experience in the elementary school building committee, we've been careful we've been careful of not overusing that time, even when it's been given generously, where people want to talk to us, but not chit-chatting, so. So anything else on this? And I will, at Andy's suggestion, I will do we discuss this and that it would be done at the April 7th meeting. So some of the other things that were listed for today's agenda got resolved at the council last night or were never referred. So I just wanted to give a quick report to everyone, because one of the things we haven't heard very much about is the level of stress within the town on over the years, how they've been adjusting and managing with what has been very tight budgets. And the 4% that they're currently budgeted at for an increase is going to require very, very tough decisions. So I met today with the town manager, the assistant manager, and the finance director, along with the town council president, to just get a better understanding of this. And I think, as many of us know, but it's good to remind ourselves that as a result of council discussions, the town has added multiple new programs over the last several years, and with associated people costs. This includes a 10-person CREST department, which once you put benefits in, if it's fully staffed, and we've been for a variety of reasons, it's never quite been fully staffed for a full year because people come and they've left and we have vacancies. But if it was fully staffed with benefits, is in the $1 million range. We added 4 firefighters. We have a 2-person DEI department, and we've most recently added inspectors to implement a rental registration program. These were council decisions, but they then reverberate with town budget, which was already juggling with very tight budgets. Over time, the vacancies have been helping to pay for the fact that utility bills are going up, or vehicles have been are in need of repair, and our finance staff has been scrutinizing bills and looking for different ways of saving nickels, dimes, pennies that adds up to a lot of money. We're really fortunate that we've had a team and in the finance department and other staff that said, how do we juggle? How do we deal with the fact that there are vacancies and staff take on additional roles? And a lot of this staffing that we have in the town is also supporting the fact that we're building new buildings in town with permitting, with staffing the planning department, and that generates revenue for the town. So this is a resource. The town is a resource for everyone. That revenue, the new growth revenue, is supporting all of our services, schools, and every piece of it. And the other thing I think we as the council have to take some ownership for and be a whole lot more careful, and this is me speaking as a counselor, is we're considering some new initiatives such as waste hauler or transportation commission that would further add to staff costs. We have to start thinking about budget implications well before we come up with aspirations. So the conclusion I reached is that even at 4% is a very set of tough decisions on staffing, on benefits, on what we provide to the town. It's going to be an extremely difficult year. So I just wanted to report back on that conversation. And I also came away feeling that we as the Finance Committee really need to start looking at multiple year budgets and do them earlier rather than later. So I don't know where we squeeze in a meeting, but in my mind is once we get through this year, we should start maybe in September looking at multiple year budgets because it gets worse each year. You know, we've been fortunate in the last few years to have new growth come in at the level it is, but when it doesn't come in at that level, the squeeze becomes even tighter. And unless the state changes a lot on how state payments for our roads have been flat, state education with what's happening with the charter expansions, FY27 is going to be even tougher than this year. So that's just a general report back on thinking a need, particularly as the Finance Committee, we can begin to have discussions and just have staff come in and give us this bigger picture on the municipal side of the budget. We hear a lot on the school side, but the municipal side, the juggling that's been going on has been truly impressive to try to live within tight budgets over the last several years. So I see two hands are up, Andy and Bernie, and Paul and Melissa, feel free to jump in if I didn't capture that, but I just, you know, trying to message that out, that this is a really difficult year for everyone. And it's not that last year was easy, you know, that this is a continuing story of budget stress. Andy?
Well, you had mentioned the Transportation Commission, and I wanted to come back on that for a second because and Bob is, of course, also on both the TSO committee and this committee. I think our feeling is that the Transportation Committee is actually going to save staff time, not cost staff time, because right now you have a very convoluted process that something is referred to TSO. It goes from TSO, then it consults the TAC and DAC, or now the Council on People with Disabilities. It goes around in somewhat circles, which requires multiple presentations by staff to multiple committees, and then comes back to the TSO and goes to before getting to the council. That based upon our study of it, it is a much more efficient process that takes place. And you know, we I think have felt that the design says that, and the experience of Northampton, which has had a commission for a long time, says that. Paul might have some comment on it. The other, though, that you didn't mention, I'm less certain about, and that's waste hauler. It is possible that waste hauler is going to have require more staff time, though the intent would be to build it into the fees that are charged to people who use the home trash pickup service, that you would build it into what'll be an enterprise fund if it goes forward. But
no, my comment wasn't a conclusion, Andy, as much as if a commission, if the way I'll do transportation, if the way Northampton runs it is staffed and it's not staff that we have now, we've got to be considering that, you know, in terms of whatever we're looking at. And the same with waste haulers. So you said maybe there's a way of dealing with it, but putting things into the municipal budget is making the municipal budget staffing grow. So it's more an observation that the council is driving some of the stress in the municipal budget unless we're careful. So TSO hasn't come to a conclusion yet, I know on this. So it's more me sitting outside that process saying we should be really scrutinizing it at the very beginning. And we don't always do that.
Yeah, I just was wanting to make sure that the Finance Committee report doesn't get to conclusions on that topic when it hasn't really been there's no evidence that I have seen yet that would support that conclusion.
It's okay, and I don't think we have to report. This is just me coming in saying this is going to be a difficult year and we've got to be more careful. So yes, and in our guidelines, we said don't take on new initiatives. We've already got that written in the guidelines, so, or be careful. So thank you. Bernie.
Yeah, Kathy, I agree with just about everything you said. I'd ask that people take two additional things into account. One, we're used to seeing inflation expressed by the cost of the CPI, which is based on a basket of goods and services that a typical household purchases. The town is not a typical household. So inflation in terms of the cost of services, the cost of the stuff the town buys, what the town does, actually runs a percentage or more ahead of the CPI. So if the CPI is at 3%, you can rest assured the town's CPI is 4 or 5%. We need to keep that in mind. The other thing is that we spend a lot of money trying to develop affordable housing, which is great. But our focus is on, can you afford the house? Once you have the house, you have to keep it. And you have to pay all the costs associated with that house, which are property taxes, water fees, sewer fees, any kind of other payments or fees that you have to make because you own the house. So if you're gonna say we're gonna put all this money into affordable housing, but we're gonna charge you more to take out your trash, you're working against yourself. The same thing, we have to keep in mind that all those costs, and the fact that Amherst is kind of a high cost community, trying to find somebody who can do work for you on your house or your property tends to be a challenge in Amherst. If you have to pull permits to do work on your property and the permit structure is fees are high, that dissuades people. So two things. One, inflation for the town is far greater than inflation for the average family. And two, if we want the town to be affordable, we have to take into account the cost of community services as well as the cost of housing. That's my, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Alicia.
Thank you, Kathy. I don't have anything to add to this conversation, although I am in agreement with most of what you proposed. I just wanted to announce my presence.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Paul.
Thank you. And Melissa, I'm sure will want to weigh in as well. So I think one of the conversation after listening to your conversation last night, so one of the things the counselor said was that we don't really know what it means to be looking at a $500,000 deficit on the town side. What does that really look like? And we feel ill-equipped to respond. And open ears by the counselors, but we haven't been giving you information along those lines. And we are hearing it from the school district, and it's really hard, that we see the real hardships that the school is going through. I just want you to recognize they're a month ahead of us in terms of budget preparation because of their deadline. Our deadline is a month later. And the other thing is that we've been really hesitant to talk about the potential damages that things that would have steps the town would have to take to get within our 4% of the budget. And if that goes down, it will be even more difficult. So, but it's evident to everybody. You can see with the schools, it's really about FTEs. It's a full-time equivalent employees, how those add up. And if there are and they're going to come from one side of the budget or they're going to come from both sides of the budget, but it's just a matter of what side of the ledger they lined up on. And, as we look at it, we look at, we know how we're going to look at this, approach it. We're going to look at, it really is about personnel. Do we do you know, reorganizations? Do we do, I don't want to use the word, do we do reduce hours, which would reduce pay, which would reduce services? Do we look at whole departments? Do we look at vacancies? And um, and so all the things that are on the table that we are actively having the conversations at you know, the finance level, but not with our department heads at this point in time, but that will happen very, very soon. So you know, that deficit remains, and it's going to be there until we start to come up with how we're going to approach those reductions. And if that deficit is doubled, then it's going to be even more severe. We the intention is not to play games with this. We will prioritize the highest values of the community, in my sense, which is public safety and you know, the core services that we have to provide, and then move from there. So
You know, and Paul, just on terms of the stress, and I just had to do a back of the envelope to figure it out, but my best estimate was $500,000 on the town and health insurance cost increase. You know, so I was just trying to say that in addition to, there's, as Bernie said, there's wage and pay is going up, cost of X, Y, or Z, but so the amount that's in the 4% that right off the bat is health insurance, unless there are fewer people. You know, I mean, it's just it compounds the problem over time. Mandy?
A couple of thoughts, without totally getting into specifics. The first one is you know, after, you know, this is for my 7th budget season, I guess, on the council, along with many others that are sitting on this committee. And that difference in schedule, I think, is something we as a council have to acknowledge and recognize as we talk through our guidelines and our budget conversations ourselves, recognizing that we don't have information on a third of the budget or 2 of the 4 areas, sort of thing, as other twos are talking about it, and being careful to acknowledge that, recognize that, and take precautions around that as we are asked to do other things with the budget through this sort of 3.5 month big cycle from March to the end of May, sort of thing, as other entities meet their statutory deadlines. But I have a question for Paul, you know, and this is, you've talked about the guidance, the deficits that you're trying to close on your side that we would normally not hear about at all until May 1, or the first meeting in May when you present the actual budget, right? And I appreciate that you have been forthright in that this year ahead of time. And I'm sure we'll have questions when we get there about how that deficit was closed, whatever that deficit is. But as we are looking and have motions on the floor, actively on the floor at this point, at the council level for amending budget guidelines, would guidance from the council on how to close deficits, or what things we would recommend you do to close deficits, say, and I'd be helpful, number one, and what would that guidance look like? Because I can see that guidance looking 12 different ways. You mentioned some of them: specific departments, empty positions, various things. You can even think about it as, you know, I think the school committee in verbal guidance a lot of times says stay away from student-facing positions, potentially. You know, I'm not sure what the equivalent is in municipalities, but something that's general but also helpful. So I guess that's one of my questions as we work through this year before you present your budget, but also as we think about what do we do with budget guidelines going forward, and what do they look like going forward in those conversations. would guidance be helpful if you face deficits, and what type would that be to be most helpful? What would that look like from the council?
You know, so we're like, what, 38 days before I have to give you a budget, and it's actually less than that because we have to prepare the document, etc. So the decisions are being made in the next, and if the guidance changes dramatically from what we have been working on, we've been working really hard on this 4%, which includes a major deficit. If that changes dramatically, it's just, I think it's a stunner. I don't know what, we just don't know what the answer is on that one. So we've been really actively working to meet the deficit we have, and then to put another quantum on top of that would be a challenge. I mean, I guess I don't really know the right answer to it, because I worry about starting to have public discussions about potential budget cuts, and getting people alarmed if someone were to say, I'll say close the, finance office, because we know we're not going to do that, but I'll use that as an example. And then all those people start to get really alarmed, and it's really disruptive. We recognize that. But on the other hand, we have to start having these hard conversations about where our values are. And I think I would value that from the council. It's like, here are things that we value in terms of where we think, and I don't think I would ask you not to be targeting specific positions. Say, I really don't like the comptroller, so let's eliminate that position. She wants to be eliminated. But I think, I mean, there's all these ramifications when you go down that road, and the schools are aware of this as well, that when you if you lay off people, there are unemployment costs that come along with that. So it's not a full amount that you are able to gather. Melissa, what do you think?
So I was just going to say that, to me, what has happened recently is that the values or priorities that the council has delivered in one document is inconsistent with the values and priorities that they're acting out in council today. And so that makes it very difficult to say, you know, we value X, Y, and Z, and we're making it a priority for the town manager, which therefore is through the budget, we must meet those priorities, and then say, oh, actually, we want all the money to go here. And so that there's a disconnect in those two periods of guidance. And so when you just say, oh, it's easy, just move it over here. No, it's not. And I think that, so that there needs to be alignment in those two discussions. And then the second thing is, I've said it before and I'll say it again, you cannot revenue your way out of this problem. This is a big problem. And, to move money from capital or from stabilization and pretend that it's a one-time cost is short-sighted and irresponsible. And so, I'm going to say that because, I don't have to live with the consequences, but these systems and these best practices were built over time, over people that care about Amherst and work to preserve its viability, and to dismiss that is short-sighted, and to say that that's because we didn't think about it is just goes against everything that this community has built.
So we have talked about this, and it resonates with all of us, I think, because Melissa has worked in the municipal finance field for decades, and when she got here, she was like, oh my God, I'm in Amherst. Because Amherst has for decades had a very strong reputation beyond Sandy Pooler, beyond John Musanti. She worked with John Musanti in Northampton, and recognizing the standards that Amherst has always maintained on the discipline of its financial structures and the quality of the people, like in this room, but in our finance office specifically, it was always the model for the state. I mean, it was no accident that John Masanti and Sandy Pooler and Sean Mangano were all of counsel for the Fiscal Policy Committee for the MMA. They were seen as municipal finance experts. And I think that seeing that those sort of basic tenets of how we manage our budget being eroded is really disheartening and very difficult to see.
Andy and then Alicia.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up about John. I think we really owe him in his memory a lot of credit for what we have. Our fiscal policy, financial policies manual, really he gets the credit for that because he did the drafting, brought it to the finance committee. We talked about it, but it was what he brought to the committee, not the other way around. The reason I raised my hand, though, is a different topic, and that is that another thing that concerns me, I don't say another thing that concerns me is that we hear comments from the public in which they make choices they think are, this isn't of value. And, it's difficult because I don't think that they have, most of the people who say these things just don't really understand. And I think that two of our public safety departments get this all of the time. And it concerns me because one is the police department and, oh, we're overstaffed in the police department. Well, if anything, we're understaffed in the police department, and they really have done magnificent to do what they do, but they couldn't do with less and safely staff. And the other is Cress. I think that there's, because I get comments on the street, I haven't heard it as much in public meetings, but I get people who come to me in various locations and say, gee, I read that in the newspaper about Cress, and isn't this failing, and why are we continuing to do this? And I think that both of them concern me when that happens, and I try and respond to individuals, but I do get concerned about those kinds of comments that are made by people who think that they know the answer, but they don't really understand the complexity of what they're saying.
Alicia.
Thank you, Kathy. So I did just want to take a moment to thank you, Melissa, and everyone else from the finance department for all of the hard work that you all have done over the years. I mean, Amherst's reputation itself is a testament to all of that.
You broke up, Alicia.
I totally agree.
Sorry.
When you talk,
Can you
I didn't mean to cut you off, Alicia. Were you just beginning? Yeah.
No, it's okay. Sorry. I think I broke up for a moment, but I just wanted to bring that up because I know we have talked about the school reputation and the changes that are happening there. And that is not the fault of any person in this town. And I don't even think it diminishes our overall reputation. Like Amherst is still a place where people want to live here, right? Like the residents who came out last night and who were concerned, they want to stay here. Like I don't think people want to leave this town. And so I think we are in an unprecedented time. And I think our community is just calling for us to look at everything with a fresh set of eyes. And even if that means the changes they're asking for aren't made, I think we owe it to our community to thoroughly look at these things and see, where can things be done and where can things not be done. And so that's why I think Kathy's suggestion of looking at the budget for multiple years is going to be critically important at this time for us as a council, for us as a town, but also for our community, because our community has been harmed, right? And healing requires transparency and understanding and education. And the budget is extremely complicated for people to understand. And so I just think that I hope that you all don't feel like this undermines any of the critically important work that you're doing. And I hope that we can still continue to review the things that we've done, the best practices that we have, and to see if there is any room for changes that would benefit us in the long run, and to support the values and the needs in our community. And I did just also want to say, I think, Paul, you said something about community safety being a value, a priority in our community, and I agree. And I think that that's holistic. And I think taking care of our youth and our is part of making sure our community is safe. And so, how do we take into account all of these values and priorities, and how do we make sure that we are continuing and sustaining our reputation and valuing the work of our people? I think it's a really hard task. So this is mostly just a comment. I don't think I need a response, but I did want to say thank you all, and that this is a hard conversation. I think we need to keep going in this direction that we're going.
Paul?
No, I want to appreciate that you said that, Alicia. That really means a lot. And I also mean, uh, I mean, this is a difficult time. There are hard decisions that have to be made, and I don't think there is a blame game here. It really is that there's not enough revenue coming in to support the services that we need and that we want. And so that means we have to make some very difficult decisions. And I think that that's the sort of conversation that's important to have, is like, where are our values and where are we putting them? I am so sympathetic with what the schools are going through, in terms of what their needs are. It's very apparent and unenviable position to be in. And then you have parents and custodians who really want certain services for their children, as we do on our side as well. So we're going to have to lose some of those things. And I think you as elected officials in the school committee and the library trustees have to say, yes, we're not going to be able to give everything to everybody. And this is going to be that year that we do that.
So just Alicia's saying, looking out 3 years and trying to be as transparent as possible. I found it really helpful. And I should ask the 25 people who were in the room at a District 1 meeting where I said, this is the total revenue increase for the whole town. And here's how much health insurance took out of the total revenue increase of the out of town. That leaves this much money, and it was, it on a, on a base of whatever, it's a reality check on, as Melissa said, we'll not revenue ourselves out of this, when something changes. And when I first ran, and was knocking on doors, someone said, my tax dollar doesn't seem to buy as much as it used to. And I said, it doesn't, because some more money used to come in from the state. So he was talking about leaf pickup, that they used to pick up my leaves, and started listing things that now I have to do myself, that over time, the federal government was spending more for the state, and the state was spending more for municipal. Used to be something that we, in the 60s and the 70s, that and that has shifted over time. But it was a real eye-opener to just say, this is the total amount of new money that we've got. And health insurance just gobbled up a huge amount of it, even after people took cuts in their benefit package, that we cut it down so it didn't take as big of a spike. So I think sometimes taking something complicated and making it simpler helps to start a discussion on this. So we were asked actually to do our meetings more often. So we now, in our little North Amherst community room, we have a projector where we can actually show some pictures of things. But I just thought, just on a public awareness of what the town is, we don't have that as a shared understanding. And people did get it, they were asking back and forth on it. So it was a good discussion that we had, again, with no solutions, but it was an understanding of how difficult the decisions are across the board. So I don't know, I thought this might be helpful just to at least have this, we've talked about this for half hour, 45 minutes. So we don't have anything before us to have to be making a concrete decision. And our next meeting, in theory, is April 1st, but I'm not sure that we have anything. I'll double check with Melissa and Paul, but we may be able, because we've had this meeting and we did veterans, we may be able to skip that meeting and go to the meeting after that. And we had said only April, that was an only as needed meeting. And I haven't got from Lynn yet when are we going to do the hearing on the budget? Mandy, you had suggested adding a meeting in the middle of May. It would be a special council meeting. So that would be the only otherwise you have what you saw last week I juggled the Thursday time slots so they didn't conflict with CRC and I think I did it correctly. So some Thursdays are in the afternoon, so that is the meeting schedule. And we don't yet have, the town will tell us which departments come in first and second. And Mandy, I did ask the question about water and sewer rates. If that department was coming in for rates, should they come in also for the budget then, or do we hold the rates till they come in so that Guilford naming? So I don't have an answer for that yet, but I just figured the town will figure out what the scheduling of staff is for which pieces of things that are coming. So that is the schedule as I know it. So Mandy, your hand is up. I don't have anything new to report is the shorter way of saying it.
Yeah. On scheduling, I had a question that I was leaving to the manager and future agenda items that we didn't get to last night. And it relates to the capital vote at the regional school committee, because there is a 60-day timeline that if we don't, we don't have, it's a pocket approval if we're not rejecting it. So we don't have to vote to accept it, right? It's not a pocket rejection, it's a pocket approval. That 60 days is May 13th. Is there a plan to have the budget hearings and the votes before that? Or at this point, is the plan kind of a pocket approval plan? Because if your intent is to present the budget on our May 5th meeting, you'd almost have to hold whatever forum you need that night to get the vote in that night, because otherwise we don't have a council meeting before the 13th when we have to vote it. If we want to
and Mandy,
affirmatively vote or negatively vote, right?
So Mandy, you said we don't have to vote on it. If we do nothing, that is the budget. Is that it?
That is the capital, yes.
Yeah, I'm just talking
pocket
about just
approval. Yeah, so I'm just curious what Paul's intent on presenting that is, given that the deadline is May 13th, if I did my 60 days accurately.
Yeah, so it is, this is the capital plan for the regional school district unless you object, and we haven't really dug into it deeply, but I don't think we have any objections to it. But that's a really important point to mention, that 60 days clock is ticking. So we'll talk about that internally and see if there's something we want to bring to the council, or if the council wants to schedule it, it could be something the president puts on the agenda no matter what.
Thanks.
Andy?
One is, I don't think that we've ever had a forum for the regional school budget. And so that would be unprecedented to do that. I would recommend keeping the April 1st meeting scheduled, because we don't know what might come up for the April 7th council meeting, and whether there's anything that we will want to take up. And the other reason is that when I made the suggestion last night that the schools really would be wise, regardless of how the vote came out last night on the assessment method, that they might want to think about a 4-town meeting, and gave reasons why. I saw Sarah Bess was taking notes as I was speaking, And she obviously was thinking about that. So we have to be aware of that possibility. And I think that it would be actually, in my opinion, sound if they,
The issue, Andy, is April 1st comes before the April 7th council meeting.
that's why I said keep it on the schedule, don't cancel it.
Okay, it will be sitting there with no agenda item.
Yeah,
Nothing.
and you can cancel it later.
Yeah. And it's just, you might need a meeting on the 8th. I'm not going to be here that week, but I'm just saying right now, there's nothing on that agenda. So, and there may be movement in the other 4 towns. You know, what would be the most wonderful gift we got is if everyone's willing to accept the regional assessment method as the method. I mean, that would be a gift, right? I mean, at least that issue would be resolved. So I won't cancel the April 1st. Melissa has it already booked and it says veterans under it, and we can remove that from it. And then the meeting after that is the 15th. With, again, there's nothing listed. It's just we can make sure we've at least held the slot so people know on the calendar that there's a finance committee meeting.
When were you going to, were you going to just do it yourself, or were you going to have the committee talk about who's going to take which sections of the budget after May 1st?
I thought April 15th would be great, but if people would send me in, Bernie already said that he would take either general budget or you can speak for yourself, general budget or DPW and enterprise funds. So he said these are the 2 he'd be happy to take, and no one else sent me in anything, but if people send me in their preferences, if it magically works, I can just feed it back to you. I will take whatever is the remainder. You know, in terms of departments. So you have the clusters, you know, the police and fire were on a same day, you know, so if people have a preference of what they want, if you just send it to me, then I can feed back to people that 2 people wanted the same thing, or, you know, what are the blanks? That might be better than having to take a meeting to sort it out. It might be efficient. And then by the 15th, we would have everybody lined up. That would be my suggestion of a way to do it. Alicia?
I like that idea. I'm wondering if it would be helpful if we send you 2 choices just in case we're doubled up with someone. You can just give us the second one, and that way we don't have to do another meeting to figure out if anyone picked the same thing.
That's brilliant. So give me my number 1 and my number 2, and then it would be magical if 1s and 2s all meshed so that we got everyone. And as I said, I don't know yet what day each of them will be at. Paul's team will have to figure out what the scheduling makes sense. And I forget whether, I think it was Tom who said there was 1 week he wouldn't be here, you know, so the scheduling might affect which department people or cluster people can take. So that's the plan. So if you send me them, I'll work them out and then I can have it ready for the 15th. Or I can have it ready, Andy, if everyone sends them right away, I could have it ready for the 1st. But anyway, I can have you know, this is the potential, how the topics would be divided among the finance committee members. So 2 choices, 1s and 2s. Anything else for today? Then I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
And going around the room, Kathy's a yes. Bob?
yes.
Mandy?
Aye.
Andy? Bernie? I see you saying yes, but I didn't hear you.
Let me try that button instead of the other one. Yes.
Okay, and Alicia?
Yeah.
And again, I want to thank the extra effort that in terms of all the number of staff people you had here today. And Kim, tell her she was just terrific. You know,
She was.
you know, she was clear and thoughtful, and responsive. So she was fantastic. And thank Melissa. She clearly loves this town. And that came across.
She's right there. She heard you.
Oh, she's still, oh, so Melissa's still up in my corner. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa, that, it was so heartfelt, and I think we all really appreciate that. We probably work too hard on hiding the emotional stress that's going on inside our bodies as we're working on difficult issues. My father always told me I couldn't go into courtroom because I burst into tears all the time. So I trained myself not to do that. But anyway, I think we are adjourned, and thank you, everyone, and have a good time next week if you meet.
Yeah, have a good holiday.
Have a